Hello, welcome again to On the Spot. I'm Christopher Taylor of My Astro Chris, and you're back on the spot with me. This week we have the chart of a 46-year-old female, and we'll take a little peek at what's going on there for her right now, and we'll talk a little bit about what she's experiencing relative to that. So why don't we go ahead, and first off we'll take a look at her natal chart as it stands. There it is. Okay, and so what we want to focus on, I'm going to show you that chart again here, is there's a couple of areas that we're going to focus on. The first one being what's called this T-square that's in her chart. Okay, this is where you have an opposition, and then it's met in the middle on one end or the other by another planet or a set of planets that's apexing that and forming this kind of T-square. It looks like a triangle like that. And so this is going from her first house. There's a big clump of planets in Virgo, on her ascendant in Virgo, opposing Saturn in Pisces over in her 7th house, and it's being apexed up top with Venus, the North Node, Jupiter, and even the midheaven and the Sun can be brought into that. So let's take a look at that focus right now. Okay, and so why I bring this up, and we're actually not going to talk about how this particular area is getting hit. Usually I bring up an area of a chart, and then we talk about how that area is getting hit right now. I'm not going to talk about that area. It's relatively quiet around those degrees of those signs right now. But this is something within her natal makeup, that is quite driven to be seen, well known, well liked is really the key part here. Here's someone who wants to be well liked, who wants to achieve something and do something important that people will like her for. Okay, but she battles. Okay, this wanting to be liked and everything else, and wanting to be seen, wanting to be recognized. That's all having to do with that clump of planets up top in the 10th house there. But what's the struggle that's inside of her is represented by that opposition that lies between the 1st and the 7th house. Okay, so there's like an inner desire to want to achieve, want to be important, want to have people like what she's doing. But inside of her there's a war between this really, really independent self. I mean really independent. We have the planet Uranus and Pluto over there in Virgo in her 1st house. This is someone who is enormously independent, okay, and wants to do their things their own way. But with Saturn over there in the 7th house, this whole lifetime has been about learning when it comes to relationships, learning about balance, about authority, about making sure that she's not allowing herself to be over-authoritized or over-authoritizing others. And in this kind of case, you know, she can easily swing back and forth from rebelling against authority very strongly to the point where it makes her look bad out there, but also going through times of saying, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just going to obey, and then, you know, to look good, in other words, but that builds to a point where she has to rebel again. And so how do we break this seesaw? That's a life challenge for her. And so we're not going to talk about breaking that seesaw in this talk, but I just wanted to bring that up as something where here's someone who's really trying to balance the inner needs of herself with the outer expectations and how that looks in the world. And the perception from her standpoint is that if she follows the rules, she looks good. If she follows her own self, she looks bad. And she's got to come to some kind of meeting in the middle there where she realizes that when she comes from her own heart, that she can be accepted out there and can look good. But the point is, she wants to really achieve something. It's not about just looking good. She wants to achieve something. And, you know, does this person have the capabilities of achievement, of getting things grounded into reality? And absolutely yes would be the answer to that question. And so what I want to do is bring up her natal chart again. This time we'll have that T-square circled, but we'll also have a couple of other components circled. She has what's known as a grand trine in her chart. That's 3 120-degree angles that all meet and form a triangle across the entire circle. Very flowing kind of energy. And in this case, it goes from that ascendant, that clump of planets over in Virgo, up to her 9th house, where she has Mercury in Taurus, and over to around the 5th house cusp, where she has her moon in Capricorn. So let's take a look at those also circled here. And the reason I bring that up is because this triangle is an area that is getting hit right now. And it's getting hit by a trine between Jupiter and Pluto. There's a very positive potential behind this. But before we get into that, I want to talk about this trine and what it means in her chart. When you have a trine, a grand trine like this, it's connecting planets between the same element. In this case, Earth. It's connecting a planet in Virgo, it's an Earth sign, to a planet in Capricorn, her moon, another Earth sign, to a planet in Taurus. That's where Mercury is, and that's another Earth sign. So all 3 Earth signs are flowing together. And Earth is that energy about manifestation, about accomplishment, about achievement, about bringing it down to Earth. We always use that kind of a term. That's what it means. Okay? And so here's someone with an inner storage who in past lives has accumulated this proof, in a way, that she's able to achieve, able to produce. Okay? But it's interesting because she has this potential in her to produce, to achieve, but it's in her psyche that other people want from her, different things than she wants for herself, and this sense of only being able to achieve to please others, or achieve to please herself and anger others, or not appease others, and have people disappointed in her and things like that. This is her inner battle. But the point is, she has the potential to achieve what she wants if she can come to that kind of centered place. And at her age, she should, at this point, be coming to a place where she can recognize herself going in that seesaw and pulling it together. And right now, with Jupiter and Pluto hitting this grand trine, and where these planets are, we can show that right about here. I'll show you where Pluto and Jupiter. Pluto's down around the 5th house cusp, right around her moon, and Jupiter is hovering around that Mercury up in the 9th house. So here's a look at that. And so what this means, because essentially going back to this about the spring of 2010, this is when Pluto started hitting all these planets. It first formed a trine to Mercury up there in the 9th, and then it formed a conjunction with the moon right in the 5th house cusp, and then also a trine to her ascendant. And then what happened, that was the spring of 2010 that started, and it's going on for a couple of years here. So until the spring of 2012, there's a sense of this building, this potential in her building to a point of being directed somewhere, okay? And with Jupiter up in the 9th house, Jupiter just here in late June, early July of 2011 started making aspects to all of those areas. It first conjuncted Mercury up in the 9th, formed a trine down to the moon on the 5th house cusp, and then it formed a trine over to the ascendant, okay, over in Virgo. And this again started late June, early July. This will last all the way until spring of 2012, lo and behold. And this trine between Jupiter and Pluto, because if Jupiter is up there right on her Mercury and Pluto is right there right on her moon, and they're in a trine, well, guess what? Right now, Jupiter and Pluto are in a trine. So we're all feeling that Jupiter-Pluto trine somewhere in our charts. In her chart specifically, it's landing right on those planets, and it's also forming that, completing the grand trine to her ascendant, which is really exciting. This is a really exciting period to grow, expand, and blossom this inner potential that she has for achievement and for manifesting whatever she wants. So this is a really important time here from early summer 2011 all the way through the winter and into early spring 2012. And at the end of this winter of 2012 and beginning of the spring of 2012, this is when Pluto and Jupiter will lift off in a lot of ways off of this area. And then it's whatever she's made of this, whatever she's allowed to bloom. It's kind of like this is the time period where the food is in the oven. All right. So from now until the end of the winter, the food is in the oven. It isn't quite ready to be eaten yet, but once the spring hits, once we hit about April or May or so of 2012, this is when this individual is going to feel like that potential within her can actually start being utilized. And immediately following this period, around April and May, Jupiter will actually start forming trines down to Uranus and Pluto and those planets in her first house. This is going to be a real time of taking some action. Okay, so this is the point of building, meeting people, bringing in ideas, expanding possibilities. Okay, so there's a lot of growth that is happening right now, and it'll continue again through the winter. And the more that she can open to this growth and allow for this interchange, with Pluto on her moon, this is a lot of letting go of old emotional habits that have held her back. Self-judgments and things with that Capricorn moon. Things that have held her back from achieving and from, all the voices in her head that say, oh, no one's going to like that. No one's going to like that. Well, guess what? This is a time period of letting go of those voices, letting go of that, of what holds her back, and just saying, I have something here and I can do it. I can do it. I know I can do it. And the more she focuses on I can do it, whatever it is, it builds over this time period. And in the springtime, wow, this person is going to be ready to utilize, almost like, it's like if you have all this potential in you and you let it brew to just the point where it's perfect, and then you can unleash it. And that's where this spring of 2012 point will be for her. So that wraps it up for this week. Again, this has been On the Spot. I'm Christopher Taylor of My Astro Chris. My On the Spot readings are actually filled up now through the end of 2011. And the beginning of 2012, I'll decide whether or not I'm going to start doing these again. But I have people lined up through the end of 2011, here on out. But if you are interested in your own comprehensive reading, so I do readings for people, individuals that want full-length readings, their entire chart and what's going on now and everything. I do those. I also help couples, relationships. I do wedding services. Then there's also the business services. I help businesses understand not only right timing of action for their business, but also with employee interaction and the dynamics of employees and how to get the best out of your employees. That kind of an application of astrology. And so if you want more information, go to my website at myastrochris.com. I also have another website, myastrowedding.com. That's specifically for the wedding services, a derivative of the relationship astrology stuff. So anyway, I'd love to hear from you. And if you do, contact me there, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.